The church doors opened slowly, and every head in the wedding hall turned at the same time. The bride's family froze. The guests whispered. Even the groom stopped smiling. Standing at the entrance was a man many people thought they would never see again, a quiet single father named Daniel. But the shock wasn't that he had come to his ex-wife's wedding. The real shock was the woman standing beside him. Her clothes were worn, her hair messy from years on the streets, and her eyes carried the heavy silence of someone who had lost everything. People immediately began to murmur. Why would a single dad bring a homeless woman to a wedding like this? Some guests laughed quietly, others stared with pity, and a few simply shook their heads. But none of them knew the truth. None of them knew the story that had brought these two broken lives together. And none of them could imagine the moment that was about to unfold next. Before we continue, take a second to support the channel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us what it means to be human, please like this video, comment below, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel, Lonely Dad's Strong Heart. Your support helps these powerful stories reach more people. Daniel hadn't always looked so tired. A few years earlier, he had been the kind of man people admired. He worked long hours as a mechanic in a small garage, had a modest house, and came home every evening to his wife and little daughter. His life wasn't rich, but it was peaceful. Then slowly, things started breaking apart. His marriage began to crumble under arguments, misunderstandings, and the silent distance that grows when two people stop listening to each other. Eventually, his wife filed for divorce. Not long after, she moved on and found someone else. Daniel was left with the responsibility of raising their daughter alone. Becoming a single father changed Daniel completely. Every morning he woke up before sunrise to prepare breakfast, pack a lunchbox, and walk his daughter to school before heading to work. Nights were spent helping with homework, fixing broken toys, and sometimes sitting quietly when his daughter cried because she missed the family they used to have. Daniel carried the weight of two parents on his shoulders, and though he never complained, the loneliness slowly carved deep lines into his face. One cold winter evening, after finishing a late shift at the garage, Daniel was walking home when he noticed a woman sitting near a bus stop. She was wrapped in a thin blanket that barely protected her from the freezing wind. Her hands trembled, and her eyes looked hollow, like someone who had stopped expecting kindness from the world. Most people passed her without looking twice. Daniel almost did the same, but something inside him made him stop. He bought a warm meal from a nearby shop and quietly handed it to her. At first, she hesitated, suspicious of the gesture. But hunger eventually overcame her fear. She thanked him softly, her voice weak but sincere. That night, Daniel learned that her name was Grace. She had once worked as a nurse, but after losing her parents and falling into a series of unfortunate events, she had ended up on the streets. Without family or support, her life had slowly collapsed around her. Daniel didn't know why, but something about her story touched him deeply. Maybe it was because he understood what it felt like when life suddenly changed direction. Maybe it was because he had seen pain before and recognized it in her eyes. From that day on, whenever he passed the bus stop, he would bring her food or a hot drink. Over time, small conversations began to grow between them. Weeks turned into months. Daniel's daughter also began to know Grace. At first, she was shy, but children often see kindness more clearly than adults. She noticed how Grace always asked about her school, how she smiled gently, and how grateful she was for even the smallest gesture. Slowly, Grace stopped looking like just another homeless stranger. She became part of their small, unusual circle of support. Then one day, Daniel received an invitation that made his heart sink. It was a wedding invitation from his ex-wife. She was getting married again. Daniel didn't know why she had sent it. Maybe it was politeness, maybe guilt, or maybe something else. At first, he planned to ignore it completely. But his daughter saw the invitation and asked a simple question that changed everything. She wondered if they should go, not out of anger or sadness, but simply to show that they were okay. Daniel thought about it for days. The idea of standing in that room, watching the woman he once loved marry someone else, felt almost unbearable. But eventually he decided that maybe facing the past was part of moving forward. The problem was that Daniel didn't want to go alone. Not because he needed a date to impress people, but because he wanted someone beside him who understood struggle, resilience, and the quiet strength of surviving hard times. And strangely, the person who came to his mind was Grace. When he asked her, she was completely shocked. She had never attended a wedding like that, especially not in her current situation. Her clothes were old, and she felt embarrassed even imagining herself walking into a room full of wealthy guests. But Daniel reassured her that appearances didn't matter to him. What mattered was the person she was inside. Before the wedding day arrived, Daniel did something unexpected. He used a portion of his savings to buy Grace a simple but beautiful dress. His daughter helped pick it out. They also arranged for her to shower and get ready properly. When Grace saw herself in the mirror that day, she almost cried. For the first time in years, she didn't see a homeless woman staring back. She saw a human being who still had dignity. And that's how they ended up standing at the entrance of the wedding hall together, causing the entire room to whisper in confusion. Inside the hall, the atmosphere quickly filled with judgment. Some guests recognized Daniel as the bride's ex-husband and couldn't understand why he had come. Others stared at Grace with barely hidden curiosity. But Daniel ignored the looks. He walked calmly, his daughter holding his hand, Grace walking quietly beside them. Then something unexpected happened. The bride noticed them. Her expression changed from surprise to something deeper, something that looked almost like shame. Because while the room was full of expensive suits, luxury decorations, and polished smiles, Daniel stood there with a quiet dignity that no one else seemed to have. During the reception, whispers spread about the mysterious woman Daniel had brought. But as the evening continued, some guests began noticing small details. They saw how respectfully Daniel treated Grace, how his daughter laughed while sitting beside her, and how Grace herself carried a quiet kindness in everything she did. At one point, an elderly guest suddenly approached Grace and began speaking with her. The conversation quickly turned emotional. It turned out that the elderly woman had once been treated by a nurse years ago during a difficult hospital stay. As the story unfolded, the woman realized something shocking. Grace had been that nurse. The room slowly began to understand that the homeless woman they had judged without hesitation had once been someone who saved lives and comforted people during their darkest moments. The mood of the wedding shifted completely. People who had been whispering earlier now looked at Grace with respect. Some even apologized quietly. And Daniel's ex-wife watched all of this with tears slowly forming in her eyes. Because in that moment, the entire room saw something powerful. While she had moved on to a new life filled with wealth and appearances, Daniel had built something far more meaningful. He had chosen compassion when it would have been easier to walk away. By the end of the night, Grace wasn't standing alone anymore. Several guests offered her help, including a hospital administrator who recognized her experience and offered to help her rebuild her career. But the most powerful moment came when Daniel's daughter hugged Grace tightly and told her she hoped she would always stay in their lives. And for the first time in years, Grace felt like she finally had a place in the world again. Before we finish this story, I want to ask something special. If this moment moved you even a little, please write the word kindness in the comments. It helps spread the message that compassion can truly change lives. The truth is, Daniel never went to that wedding to prove anything. He didn't go there to make anyone jealous or to show off. He went simply because life had taught him that broken moments can sometimes lead to unexpected healing. Grace's life slowly began to rebuild after that day. With support and determination, she found her way back into the medical field. And though the road was still difficult, she was no longer walking it alone. Daniel continued raising his daughter with the same quiet strength he had always shown. But now their small family had grown just a little bigger. Sometimes the world measures people by their clothes, their money, or their mistakes. But every once in a while, someone reminds us that true worth is measured by kindness. And on that unforgettable day, a single dad walking into his ex-wife's wedding with a homeless woman didn't create embarrassment. He created a miracle. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Lonely Dad's Strong Heart. Your support helps keep these meaningful stories alive.